situation. If, for example, the federal government of Nigeria is giving the University of Lagos, just hypothetically, they are giving them $100 or 100 naira every year. If University of Lagos really want to develop or generate autonomy for itself in decision-making and policy-making on a range of issues, in particular those ones that Mogalu spoke about. I am not bringing the fourth one because the fourth one on regulation falls eminently within the domain of government, because there is little room for self-regulation among our university, except if you are talking of visiting professors to grade papers and the rest. But the universities must put more effort in raising their own resources. It is a high honor and special privilege to introduce myself as a member of the editorial board of Prime Business Africa, which has just been established. My name is Ambassador Ejeveme Eloho Otobo, currently a non-resident senior fellow in peace building and global economic policy at the Global Governance Institute in Brussels.
My name is Eloho Barry. I am the founder and CEO of African Media Agency, a Pan-African PR solutions that works within the continent. We've got teams in Abidjan, in Kampala, in South Africa, Johannesburg and Durban, but also in Senegal and across all Francophone Africa and in North Africa.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Marcel Mbamalo. I'm the CEO of New Stage Publications Limited, publisher and editor-in-chief of Prime Business Africa.
I feel honored and privileged to serve on the board of Prime Business Africa. I said I'm honored because I'm not necessarily into business reporting, even though I spent years editing a newspaper and I've had to handle business stories. Let me just say I'm a nominal consumer of business news. But having been brought here to serve on this board, I feel that I'm about to start a new orientation.
So New Stage Publications Limited actually covers a wide range of area in journalism, and first, we are just coming out with the very first title, which is Prime Business, Prime Business Africa, www.primebusiness.africa. And while we decided to launch that, because we believe that for every economy, not just in Nigeria, the African economy is actually dependent on how the private sector, is driven and how the micro economy is thriving. If the microeconomy thrives very well, it's going to impact on the overall corporate governance of countries. So we believe that we need to, as a watchdog, a professional team of journalists, we believe that we need to be the watchdog in that sector to be able to provide in-depth analysis, provide data, provide news and accurate, balanced and true reporting in the area of business and economy, and that's the reason we are here.
Prime Business Africa will fill a special void in terms of in-depth analysis on economic and social trends and policies in Nigeria, West Africa and Africa.
To me, Prime Business Africa is the publication that we need. Certainly in Nigeria, but most importantly, moving forward on a Pan-African scale. We need investigative journalism, we need good in-depth pieces. This is the tool and and the media that will help further the communications infrastructure that I've been raving about for quite some time now.
I would like to see Prime Business Africa as the number one on the continent. And when I say, you can be number one and still be empty, I don't mean just leading. If they say the horse in front is the one that will take first, do you know whether the horse is now sick and after breasting the tape to fall down and crash? Because we've seen medium that came to be number one, they were leading, but we saw the way they crashed. They crashed because of the ethical values that we've been talking about, because they were not able to sustain whatever, because the battle is not getting to the top, it's remaining at the top. So that's why the foundation has to be solid. In the house where we're seated now, if the ground floor was not solid enough, you can't be on the second floor. I'm sure you know that. So once the foundation is solid, I can see that the Prime Business Africa will be number one.
Dr. Marcel Mambalu has been a dear friend of mine for many, many years. I've always admired his work, his ethics, his understanding of what good reporting and excellent journalism is. He's driven by passion and hard work.
I've known Dr. Marcel Mbamalu for quite a long time when he was working at The Guardian. He was the one who wrote the review of my book, Africa in Transition, a new way of looking at progress in the region, which offers an in-depth analysis on not only in the social, political and economic trends in Africa, but on issues relating to peace building, governance, public policy reform, and foreign policy of Nigeria.
I think Dr. Marcel Mbamalu, I have to get used to calling him Dr. Marcel Mbamalu, he'd always be Marcel. The first thing I noticed about his personality was this warmth. He has an aura. He enters a room and he fills the room. I studied theater arts in school, and there's something we call stage presence. He has stage presence, that means character. He has a good profile. When he gets into a room, you are forced to raise up your head from what you are doing to look at him first. Not because he's the finest man on earth, but because of the aura. I think it's that one you can say is divine. It's more spiritually given. That somebody gets into a room and you say, wow, this is a character that has entered the room. He's tall, he's big, he's fair complexion, he's handsome, let me put it that way. But there's also the aura, and the aura comes with the aura is fleeting. It's not something you can capture by the hand. It's something in the air. You just feel it when the person enters the room. Gawa.
Yeah. I regard myself as an editor, teacher, and a human capital developer, because by inclination and by the virtue of what I do, I think journalism actually runs in my blood, and that's why we are doing this. We had other options. We had so many other things to do, but we felt that having been privileged to be so trained in the field of journalism, at least my first degree was in journalism. My second degree journalism, my third degree in journalism. So I believe that I can't. To whom much is given, much is expected.
What I hope to bring to this endeavor is the collection of best practices that I've encountered in all this my writing and reading of foreign newspapers. And I hope to join the other members of this group to make it a huge success.
So having gotten so much from the society, I think I need to give back. And that's why we are doing this. So we are ready to train younger journalists, individuals who want to play a good role in the media space. So we offer that platform, the New Style Publications platform, to bring in younger Nigerians, and equip them to become better journalists, become instruments for national development, to assist in informing Nigerians and Africans, and become instruments of development, so to speak. So that's why we're here, and God helping us, we will deliver. By the grace of God, we will deliver.
Yeah, I look forward to helping to do 1 or 2 trainings on writing, to tell you that you can make business story to read like short story. Who doesn't like to read short story among us? Short story like we post on Facebook. So why don't you report the business like that? After all, when you get to your house and you want to talk to your family about business, you don't start speaking jargon that your wife will drive you out of the house. So I look forward to an opportunity to be able to impart things about. Let me use an expression that somebody said, I'm an editorial Puritan or Puritanist, that like for the text to be right. We don't get it right all the time, but I'm the type that can, when I'm editing a paper, I make sure that every damn copy I'll read. If I don't have time to read it, I get a bit nervous that this way I didn't read it. How did it go? So I'm a Puritanist when it comes to editorial content.
I can't wait to see where this venture takes you. I have no doubt it will be very successful. I'm very happy to be here for you, to support your venture, to advise where I can, and to learn alongside you. So on this note, I wish you every success, and let's launch this beauty, Prime Business Africa.
Wow. A very good evening, Your Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ambassador Joe Keshi. Wherever you are joined, wherever you are joining us from, thank you and good evening from Nigeria. Thank you for joining us for this colloquium organized in honor and as a tribute to Ambassador Otobo. This is being organized by the Prime Business Africa, who, as you all know, Dr. Otobo was, until his unfortunate and sudden death, was a dedicated, respected, and a member of the editorial board of Prime Africa. The theme for this colloquium is it's the African of Ambassador Eloho's dream, and his very good friend and brother will, of course, be making the presentation. Ambassador Otobo had so many dreams, but his work, unfortunately, was not completed before his death. His desire to see Africa completely free and rising
and enjoying its full potentials, unfortunately has not been realized before its departure. But it's a dream that lives on, and it's a dream that I'm sure that we all will continue to strive for. It will remain an inspiration because it's a work in progress. I mean, the full development of Africa and Africa maturing and rising to become, a very strong member of the international community. Its death and the circumstances shocked us all. Certainly for an easygoing gentleman, a respected member of the global community, a consummate Nigerian diplomat, a beloved husband, father, uncle, and friend to many of us around the world. We wish the circumstances was different. More because there were so many outstanding businesses to be finished. His forthcoming book with his good friend, Ambassador Obaze, is still in the works. For weeks, both of us exchanged notes on the forthcoming elections in Nigeria, spoke about the need for real change. He had promised to expatiate more on how the change could be achieved. And the week he was to do that was the week the light went off. And today he rests in the Lord's bosom. Apart from his work on the international level, Ambassador Otobo was also very passionate about the situation in the Niger Delta of Nigeria. And a couple of times as the DG of the Brace Commission established by the governors of the region to work out how the regional states can cooperate on economic and ensure integration. He sent me a couple of notes, ideas, and write-ups on how he thought we could ensure the development of the Niger Delta of Nigeria. As you all know, he is from Delta States, a strong state in the Niger Delta. As we commence this tribute, our sincere condolences to his beloved wife and the lovely children he left behind. We will miss him, but we know you all will miss him more. But we thank you this evening for allowing us to share your grief, and may my apologies. We will miss him, but we know you will miss him more. Thanks for allowing us to share your grief, and may his memory remain a blessing. Now let's get started, as I wish to invite myself, Mba Malu, publisher and editor-in-chief of the Prime Business, to make his opening remark.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Joe Keshi, and thank you for finding time to join us today, this auspicious event to honor our own very best, Ambassador Eloho Otobo. I don't know whether I would say it's a pleasure. It's not a pleasure anymore. Today is actually a very sad day for us at Prime Business Africa. It's a day that we would have loved to avoid, but here we are. I would say we must give honor to him for the role he has played, not just for at Prime Business Africa, but for the entire African continent at large. I want to welcome also our lead speaker today. Of course, Your Excellency, you've mentioned him, Ambassador Osaze. Also welcome our very chairman, Bongadi, Dr. Bongadi, chairman of New Start Publications Limited, publishers of Prime Business Africa. Dr. Bongadi. I also welcome here the vice chairman of the company, Professor Chinyere Stella Okuna, the very first female professor of mass communication in sub-Saharan Africa. She's here with us. I also wish to welcome other members of the board, Mr. Jama Nikulakbo, who incidentally, sorry about that, apologies please, who incidentally was my boss at The Guardian. He's here. He's one of the directors at Prime Business Africa. You're welcome. Other members of the board are also welcome. Let me also welcome the chairman of our editorial board, who Otobo also works with on that board, Professor Pat Utomi. He is just calling on phone, obviously finding it difficult to connect, but our technical team is helping out with that. Ambassador Osaze will be speaking on a whole lot of issues that I wouldn't want to, a kind of a preempt, because I know as a very close friend of late Otobo, he has everything about him to say. But I must make one comment, which is very, very germane here. I met Otobo, Master Otobo, I met him when I was at The Guardian as editor, I was group news editor at The Guardian when I met him. And our meeting was actually very circumstantial, in the sense that he wrote a book. One of the books, of course, he wrote 3 books, but one of the books at that time was Africa in Transition. And I happened to stumble on that book, and I liked it so much, and I decided to review that book at The Guardian. I did a 3-part review of that book, while at The Guardian. And that was how Mr. Otobo got impressed. We never met before then. And he kept talking about that review, talking about that to everyone he met, including Anyoku, Emeka Anyoku, Chief Emeka Anyoku. Also, he spoke to him about it. And he, in turn, told me, look at what the story is going around about a book I reviewed for Otobo. So when finally we met, over a lunch, we talked. That was when I got to know the kind of person he is, how passionate he is about, even journalism. He's not a journalist, but very passionate about journalism and all of those. And our friendship took off from there, And I never knew I would leave The Guardian, maybe the time I did. But after clocking 50, I told myself I had to leave and retire, at least from paid employment. And when I did, and that was my 50 plus, the first person that came to my mind was Otobo. And I called him, I said, look at what is happening. I want to do something different for myself. I want to be a media entrepreneur. And he encouraged me. And that's how we are where we are today. He brought some ideas and all of those. And we spoke. I talked to a few others, including the people, every other person on the board today. And here is what we have. Finally, I want to see operationally what Otobo brought to bear on our board. I think the chairman will speak today. Chairman of the board, Dr. Bongadi, will speak. The deputy chairman will also speak today. But he brought a whole lot of ideas that actually helped us to be where we are. Because today we started, in terms of website grading and everything, we are about 2 million in ranking in Nigeria when we started. But today we are just over 300, about 318 in ranking. And that's the kind of expertise that was brought on board. So, and Otobo with the rest of the team actually did very well to ensure that we are where we are today. So he brought up so many ideas, and some of which we are implementing today. So it's a big loss for us at Prime Business Africa. And that's why we say, let's bring his colleagues, his family, also to let his works speak, so that the message that he has for Africa, for Nigeria, will continue from here. He appears dead, but he's not dead. I want to tell us, the wife herself, Esther Otobo, is here with us today. Sorry, I didn't acknowledge her at the beginning. Madam Esther is here, the wife. Madam We can also continue to say, we can just continue to say condolences to you, but I kept telling her that her husband is still alive and will continue to be alive by the grace of God. The son is also here. So let's the discussion continue. And what we're going to talk about today is about what he stands for in Africa, the Africa of Ambassador Eloho Otobo's dream. And I'm sure that our guest speaker today will do justice to it. Thank you very much. As we continue, other things will come up. Thank you very much. Moderator, over to you. Meanwhile, Professor Utomi is here. I welcome him as well, the chairman of editorial board. Welcome, Prof.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And then the chairman of editorial board is here too, Dr. Bongadi. Welcome, Dr. Bongo.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Welcome, everyone. We're happy to be here.
Professor Okuna is here too. You're welcome, ma.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Over to you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Keshi. Sorry, you are muted. I don't know whether. Okay.
Because I can't see. Yes,
Okay.
it was rhetorical.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Yes. Ambassador Obaze, are you? He has stepped away from there. It's Dr. Abike Dabiri here with us, because she has indicated she would like to speak very quickly. She had some important meetings to go to. Okay, Obaze is back. All right, Henry, you have the floor, please, to speak on the Africa of Ambassador Otobo's dream. On mute. Okay.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Well, good evening to you all, excellencies, friends, and colleagues. And thank you for gathering here today to honor our mutual friend, late Ambassador Eloho Otobo. It is rather surreal to gather and talk of and pay tribute to a dear friend, a brother, a colleague, when actually we should have gathered to honor him for his work and service to our humanity. Throughout this evening, I suspect that we will be referring to Otobo in the past tense. And that should give us pause. For as we bid farewell to him and grapple with some of the unending questions, we must also pause for a while to think of this. What we are now, Eloho was, and what Eloho is now, we shall all become. That reality is quite numbing. And what it tells us is that you will only be remembered for the work you did. Who was Ambassador Eloho Otobo? Actually, his first name is Ejeviome, his second name is Eloho, but he's fondly known and called Eloho by his family and friends. He He was a dear husband to Esther, a devoted father to Former, Elo, Oheri, and Ejiro, and of course, a dear brother, uncle, and friend to many people, some of who are gathered here to honor him. Eloho was a very dear friend and a brother from a different mother. He was a friend, a brother, a confidant, and a literary interlocutor. He was very jocular and a very effervescent person. Our professional and personal careers and friendship began almost 40 years ago. We were colleagues in the Nigerian Foreign Service. And more personally, over the years, as we became closer friends, he also became the godfather to my second son, Chinua. On a personal note, my family and I believe my wife and my children, would perhaps count 4 or 5 people I consider close personal friends. And Eloho ranks quite high on that list. We also had something in common. Eloho is from Delta State in Nigeria. I am from Anambra State, also in Nigeria. But we both come from very tiny, small agrarian communities, less than 2,000 people each. He from the Otobo town in Isoko North local government, and I from Ochuchu Modo in Obaru local government. It will interest you to know that often we teased each other as being village boys who somehow made good. Yes, indeed, Eloho was a village boy, but also a village boy who did well for himself and for his country. Eloho was different things to different people. All of it positive, or at least most of it positive, because he was human. He was a great gift to his family, to the Isoko community, to Nigeria, and indeed to the international community. Professionally, Eloho was your consummate diplomat, a career diplomat. He belonged to the category of the best and the brightest that Nigeria ever produced in its 61 years of diplomacy. He had caught a niche for himself as a scholar diplomat, both at the national and at the international levels. Indeed, during his stellar, and I don't use that word lightly, his stellar diplomatic career, which spanned over 3 decades, Eloho served in various Nigerian missions and had also at the headquarters, both in Lagos and in Abuja. And I remember that he had served in Jakarta, he had served in Beijing, and he also served in New York. But what was unique was that whenever he came back to headquarters in Lagos, he found himself being pulled back to the policy planning department, which was indeed in the ministry where some preferred to consider themselves generalists, Eloho belonged to one of the few people who had caught a niche for himself and therefore, without question, was always pulled back to policy planning. Eloho is gone, but his legacies will live on. One of the legacies he left, besides his writings, was that in the 1980s, Eloho became one of the first, if not the first, in the ministry who decided to take a study leave and go on a self-sponsored postgraduate study at Harvard University. It was intensely expensive for an individual to undertake. But that was the primacy he gave to personal growth and advancement. And interestingly, he got his NPA from John Kennedy School of Government, where he specialized in political economy. But what he has left for us is that most of his mentees from the Nigerian Foreign Ministry, from the United Nations, have also told that part, because he counseled them, to say, improve on yourself, and when you're mid-career, take time off. If you can afford it, go off to Kennedy School of Government and get that degree, and also improve your networking. Eloho and I were privileged, as some of our other colleagues, to have served at the Permanent Mission of Nigeria at the United Nations under General Joe Garba between 1987 and 1990. Thereafter, Eloho joined the United Nations and started working at the UN Economic Commission in Africa. A year later, I followed his footsteps, and I joined the UN and started working at headquarters in New York. From ECA, Eloho moved back to New York and became a member of the pioneer staff. There were only 3 of them: Eloho, Ambassador Ibrahim Gambari, Eloho, and Raul Cabral, who were to become the pioneers of a specialized office that was totally dedicated to economic issues and economic questions and development issues on the African continent. It was under their supervision that the Africa peer review mechanism was conceptualized and implemented. Subsequently, Eloho would move on to head the Peace Building Support Office, rising to the top of the professional level, an acting secretary, assistant secretary general, and becoming the acting head of that department. It was in that department, that position, that he retired in 2013. One thing that was common, a common trajectory, was that in all these years, in all his writings, in all his commitment, Eloho had the opportunity to discuss other issues, and he was quite conversant with them. But his major premise and focus remained essentially African. It was therefore not surprising that in retirement, Eloho took to consulting and to writing. But hardly did he change that trajectory. Even as a senior fellow at the Global Governance Institute in Brussels, his remit remained essentially Africa, Africa, Africa. Of course, like we heard earlier, he was on the board of the Prime Business Africa, again Africa, and the New Diplomat newspaper, which also had Africa as part of its remit. Eloho was cerebral. If you ever met him, he was a very good conversationalist. But more importantly, as to the theme of today's colloquium, Eloho dreamt about Africa, unmet needs in Africa, the challenges of governance in Africa, the needs for development in Africa. Eloho was quite Afrocentric. I would say that by way of qualification, he was unrepentantly Afrocentric. And he wrote passionately about Africa and for Africa. Broadly, he wrote about development issues. He wrote about security issues. But I think what permeated his writing the most was about governance in Africa. Eloho Otobo saw Africa, he saw in Africa not just an emerging frontier, but a continent imbued with infinite possibilities. Naturally, because he was Nigerian, Nigeria was also his passion. But I think his takeoff point was that he had a deep conviction and saw an inextricable link that existed between Nigeria and the realization of Africa's manifest destiny. I think I would say that I've been privileged to have been his co-author of many articles since 1994. And I took a casual survey of all the articles we've written since then till his demise. And I think 90% of them were focused on Africa. In retirement, we are taken to writing policy briefs, but also writing individual books, mostly on Nigeria and on Africa. And I think that started in 2015, 2 years after he retired. I had been retired for a while and had finished my tenure as a Secretary of the State Government in Anambra. And he said to me, Osoloka, you and I will not do contracts in Nigeria. We know that for sure. We'll probably not accept certain appointments just for the heck of it. So the only way to give back is to add value to the policy trajectory by writing and providing advocacy papers and making policy recommendations, essentially on good governance and the global best practices. During that period, Eloho took time, he found time to write his first book, Consolidating Peace and the Role of the UN in Peace Building. He also co-edited a book, African Development in the 21st Century, the Adebayo Adedeji's Theory and Contributions. I think that was in 2015. Of course, it is beyond footnotes to say that two men that influenced Eloho the most, both as a policy person, were Adebayo Adedeji and both late, and Ambassador Olusanu. He stayed close to them till the very end for the two gentlemen. And you would largely see their influence in his works and in his writings. Two of Eloho's books did one thing and were in tandem in offering a very clear glimpse into his mindset and his commitment to Africa. His first book, 264 pages or thereabout, 7 chapters, was essentially an empirical analysis and a compendium of lessons learned in the post-conflict building, mostly in Africa. His second book was more profound, Africa in Transition, 2017. And I won't immerse myself into the nitty-gritty of the books, but just to say that my dear friend and brother, Marcel, Dr. Marcel Mbamalo, who had the rare privilege of reviewing that book when it was launched in Lagos, encapsulated in a very synoptic fashion what the book was all about. And if I recall correctly, it was something along these lines. And Marcel, forgive me if I don't quote you in its entirety. Africa in Transition offers a bird's-eye view of Africa. It is incisive and richly illuminating in its dissection of Africa's epochal moments, something to that effect. I might have skipped some of the languages. In 2018, with 3 books under his belt, I think I had by then written also about 3 books. Eloho called me up and said, "Osoloka, it's time we look inwards. There's so much going on in Nigeria, but the sad part of it that nobody talks about national interest, nobody talks about patriotism anymore, nobody talks about policy the way it ought to be talked about." And so we began the journey of writing the book on governance in Nigeria. He personally chose the title of the book from a passage he took from the Bible about those who sow the wrong seeds, reaping the whirlwind. So the title of the book, which is still unpublished and unfinished, about 80% complete, is Nigeria Caught in the Whirlwinds. That would have been Eloho's 4th book, but then COVID intruded, and we're still getting back on track with the book, about 80% of it, when Eloho passed. My commitment, even though it's arduous, is to see that book come to fruition as soon as possible. As a person, as a writer, as a father, as a friend, Eloho was a dreamer. He dreamt about a great Nigeria, and he dreamt about Africa that pivoted around 4 cardinal points: Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, and South Africa. Eloho held out the hope that with these 4 countries, not that he discounted the others, to come together and spearhead Africa's renaissance, that the rest of the continent will naturally fall in line. One thing I liked about Eloho, and most people who know him would also attest to this, he was a raconteur of good governance principles, for which he had the knowledge, he had the authority, and his views, to my mind, most times, were beyond reproach. Because Eloho prided himself on research, worried about the veracity of the facts, and made sure that every subject matter was properly referenced. In that sense, he was as good as any academician. And I think a lot of tributes will be paid to Eloho and going down the line. I've read some, and perhaps some of you have too. But our mutual friend and compatriot, Adeboye Adekeye, who also knew Eloho very well, we knew him when he was at Columbia before he moved to Southern Africa, perhaps paid the best tribute anybody could pay to Eloho. He said that Eloho's legacy will thus be as a UN peace builder. A UN peace builder, a prophet of Africa in transition, and a patriotic Nigerian when it came to policy making and enunciation. One can never get a better adjectival qualification for one individual. But it has struck me that in all his work in peace building, which impacted on countless African countries, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea-Bissau, Burundi, Congo DCR, and a host, and even some countries outside the African hemisphere, pivoted around a particular maxim that was postulated many years ago by the former late UN Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld. It was Hammarskjöld who said that the UN was not created to take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell, end of quote. And I think Eloho understood that fully and worked hard that Africa, Nigeria included, would not go to pieces and certainly would not go to hell. It's become a cliche that an unexplored life is not worth living. But my friends, my colleagues, Esther, and the Otobo children, I can tell you this. Eloho lived his life fully. It was well explored. He was a well-traveled man, a cosmopolitan. What I regret is that his life ended too soon for him to have given more of himself. It's always difficult to assess a dear friend or relative without exhibiting Yet, as writers, policy wonks, and administrators, we are occasionally called upon to offer